to bust that down, and it's going to have a ton of seed.
Greetings, friends! Today we're visiting Green Pasture's farm, the farm of Greg Judy. And one of the neat things about Greg is he raises guardian livestock dogs along with his grass-fed sheep. And today we get to see how he does it. Another dog. Is that funny?
Down the ridge.
We are right now.
Get out. Kind of see what the sheep are doing to all this forage that our cattle won't touch. And this is one of them right here. This is called ironweed. And ironweed, the beef animals won't hardly touch it. But you see what the sheep did to it. They just decimated it. Multi-Forestry rose bushes. That's a nasty one. It's got all the thorns on it. And the sheep got a little bitty mouth, and they plucked the leaves off of it. So in a couple years, and the sheep have only been in here 2 years now, the sheep will actually kill those, the Multi-Forestry rose bushes. There's another one. See how they cleaned that up? There's hardly any leaves left on it.
Wow.
Well, for a plant to survive, it's got to have photosynthesis. No leaves, no photosynthesis. So, I don't know, we kind of changed in our tune a little bit on how we want our properties to look. We don't want them super manicured, but we have to do that on some landowners. Some landowners demand that we brush hog their farm. They want it to look like a park, and so we will do that to keep the lease. I'd rather it be a little bit more gnarly looking, so that we can grow stuff like this. Because the sheep, what used to be a pest, that was a pest plant, now it's a asset. Because we have something to lead it and grow lamb. So instead of burning diesel fuel to mow, you can grow lamb with autumn olive and Multi-Forestry rose bush leaves.
With not perfectly having a manicure type area pasture, what do you find is the benefit of that, of having it just let it grow more? Do you feel like there's more diversity in what
there's
grows?
There's a lot more diversity of critters, like all your different wildlife, just the wildlife too. There's more stuff for them to hide in. Deer are browsers. They don't want to eat just grass. They don't want to eat just clover. They like the sprouts. They like a little bit of clover, a little bit of lespedeza, a little bit of tree leaf. They're just constantly browsing. And so when you have an animal that can eat a leaf that's growing on a tree, that leaf is mining minerals from that tree, and the tree's got really deep tap roots. And so all those minerals are being deposited on the leaves. And when the animal eats that leaf, of course he poops it out right here. You've got these little raisins. Don't anybody eat these now. These are not edible. Those are raisins. And so that leaf mineral ends up in that poop.
Ah.
And so, yeah.
So that's poop, not blueberries.
If you walk over here, well, here, look at this one. So this is ironweed. There's no leaves left on that.
Wow.
As high as the sheep. If the sheep could have reached it, they'd have got that one. But they literally cleaned that up. Now, we won't be back here for 60 days. And so in 60 days, this one might send out some fresh leaves down here. There's another feeding. So, yeah.
Now, would you ever recommend bringing goats behind the sheep for the goats to get higher up?
You could.
Okay.
Yeah. The one thing that I don't recommend is hard, and that is goats and sheep together. The goats and the sheep share each other's parasites. And so you can build a pretty good parasite resistant sheep.
Okay.
Goats, I've dealt with people that have tried it, and the best medicine for a goat is to make sure he never grazes below his kneecaps. Because if he grazes below his kneecaps, that's where the parasites reside, is that in that portion. If he's always grazing up here, you're not going to have any trouble with them goats. Probably won't get any parasites in them. But goats eventually eat themselves out of a home. they kill all the brush. And then they're forced to eat lower in the canopy. And when you start forcing a goat to eat lower and lower and lower, now he's ingesting parasites. And it's tough. I mean, I've been on some farms where people had 3,000 goats, and they were dying. I mean, there was dead goats everywhere. And I'm like, what do you... And he said, well, that's why we're getting them up. We're going to worm them. But he was these are mainly Spanish nannies, and the Spanish breed. And he was giving them 80-acre paddocks, and he did that for 3 years. And at the end of 3 years, every month he would take the bottom 10% of them. He'd just get rid of them. The ones that got wormy, he'd worm them and then sell them. And he thought within 3 years he'd finally have a goat herd that was parasite resistant. Well, in 3 years he still had a bottom 10%.
Wow.
It just seemed like there was always another 10% that were getting wormy with him. And he finally sold them and went to hair sheep. And the hair sheep we have found are so much easier to manage. You'll see in a minute. We got a fence over here I'll show you. And you see it, you're like, there's no way. That's not keeping a sheep in, but it does. And it keeps our guard dogs in, too. A goat would look at that fence and laugh at you. Like, no, I'm not going to stay in behind that. There's no way. But, you know, there's quite a bit of forage left in here. But what we found out, not only with sheep, but if you'll start looking at the indicator plants, there's an indicator plant in here that I'm looking at, and it's ironweed. It's this one right here. When I start seeing them graze to right here, I need to get those sheep out of here. Now, I could have left them another couple days, and they would have came in here and started eating this buckbrush, the leaves on the buckbrush. They like the leaves on the buckbrush in the fall. They don't eat it so much in the summertime. Now, if you put them in tight, they will. But I guess the warning I have for people, especially just starting out, if you push your animals too hard, trying to make them eat things that you want them to eat, they'll eat them, but you're going to sacrifice animal performance. What I mean by that is you may start losing some animals. You may have animals that don't breed back, and it's all because you're not getting enough high-quality energy in them. They've got to have energy. Energy is what runs the world. And the hardest thing to harvest across your farm is energy in a plant. And so we're always looking at, okay, the sheep have run out of ironweed leaves. Let's get them moved. Now, and there's a lot of stuff trampled here on the ground. People say you can't build healthy soil with sheep because they're such a small animal. Oh, you won't get the trampling you do with a cow. That's not true. You can trample a ton of forage out here. I mean, look at this. This is all done with sheep.
Wow.
That was sheep.
It's all bad.
And so this has got me, look at the litter bank here. I mean, that's all dead stuff down there. Look at that.
Wow.
I mean, the sheep did all the work for us.
Now, with somebody that might have limited pasture area, would you ever recommend bringing chickens behind the sheep?
Yeah, you just got to be careful with chickens. You don't realize how much grass they eat.
Yeah.
Man, they eat a lot of grass. And if you don't move them fast enough, they will kill a lot of that grass.
Yeah.
They like to dust. Did you realize that?
Yeah, I've noticed that for sure.
So they'll make them a little, it almost looks like a nest in the ground. And they'll sit there and dust.
Yeah.
And we had 600 laying hens. And we had a married couple that was running them, and they really took down some grass. I didn't realize how much they took down.
Wow.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I got a lot of good here. We wouldn't be grass. This is another story right here. This is a native warm season grass, and this grass is called Indian grass. It's what was here before the white man arrived, the settlers. This has covered the prairies. There was 3 plants. There was Indian grass, big blue stem, and eastern gamma. And eastern gamma covered a lot of Missouri. And what's cool about it is we're starting to see this stuff appear. Now this, we suspect, came in from some hay we bought. We bought some over mature hay. It wasn't very good quality hay, but I knew it had tons and tons of seed in it. And so I kind of bought the hay just for the seed. And we unrolled it in here in the wintertime with our little bale unroller that goes behind our ATV. And that's what I say. You don't know when it's going to appear, but it'll appear. And this is the first year we saw it. So we put this down 3 years ago, and now it's just coming in everywhere. This whole field on both sides of the road has got Indian grass all over it. Well, this puts down a 6-foot taproot. So it's breaking through the hard pan. See, all of our farms in the United States, most of them have a hard pan underneath them. That's from the plow. Century of plowing the dirt, you get a hard pan under there. Well, that hard pan is hard for the plants to break through. So there's phosphorus, potassium, zinc, all these neat elements and minerals down there that these plants can't reach. And the reason they can't reach it is the hard pan. Well, you got some of these guys in your pasture, they're breaking through the hard pan. Now you're getting more water down below the hard pan, and you're getting more minerals coming up. And so it's just a win-win. It's a win-win deal. So we're excited about it. I wanted to show you over here.
Okay.
This is 1 year, not even 1 year. We just did this in December. So last December, I had Johnny come in here, and you can see where he stacked all the cedars over there. The cedars started right here. This whole ridge of cedars about 10 years ago. But this is just done in 1 year. So we took the cedars off. We came in and unrolled hay. After I put down, all I put down was Kentucky 31 fescue. And people said, Greg, why would you put that down? That's the one that's got the toxin in at the end of fight. The reason we use it, it's what's here. It's been here for 50 years plus. It's adapted, it grows well, and the animals do pretty well on it, especially in the wintertime. There's no other grass in the Midwest that will pay its way better than Kentucky 31 fescue in the wintertime. And that's because it stays green all winter long. It has a heavy sod underneath it that'll hold an animal up when it's wet out. And our most troubling month on Green Pastures Farm is March. And that's because we're coming out of winter. We're still in winter, nothing's growing. But it's raining and the freezing and the thawing and the snow, and our ground just gets like it can get like a soup. But if you got Kentucky 31 out here, it's got this big deep sod underneath it. It doesn't turn to soup. It'll hold up a 1,000-pound cow if it rains an inch every day.
Wow.
That's how important it is. And it's good feed. It's good feed in the wintertime. But you can see, I mean, this was bare soil. He took the cedars off. Let's look at what was growing underneath them. You got to get away from the sun. There you go. I mean, can you make a living on that?
Nope.
I mean, do you see a lot of energy being collected in here?
Oh, wow.
The soil is super acidic, and it's acidic because it has all these needles. That's cedar, eastern red cedar needles being dropped constantly on the ground, and it's killed the soil. Nothing will grow underneath here except for this right here. You've got this is a honeysuckle, which is an invasive. You don't want that stuff. It'll take over your farm. But look at this. Now this is moss. So that's a sign that you have a pH. This pH right here is around probably 4.8. It's even below 5. Folks, you can't grow anything on that. And so the first thing you do is when you take the cedars off, if you can figure out any way to do it, get some hay unrolled on it. If you don't have any money, the first thing you need is hay and animals. Get some animals out there trampling that hay on this. If you've got a little bit of money and you can afford it, maybe put down a ton of lime. Take a soil test. It's going to tell you about how much lime you need. But lime gets rid of this. It sweetens up the soil. And when it sweetens up the soil, then you start seeing what you saw out here. There's something there that we can feed an animal. Folks, you can't make a living in here. I mean, I guess you could if you could figure out how to cut a cedar and make a living from that cedar tree. But you can't. You can't feed that to anything. Nothing will eat cedar except for a goat. And a goat will take the bark. He'll grab it right here and start chewing on it, and he'll pull it off in streams like licorice. And goats will kill cedar trees. But that's the only animal you can put in here. There's just not a lot of energy. You see much in here, Mike?
No, and even with the trees being as close as they are, they're really not even really healthy trees.
They're terrible. They're terrible trees. I mean, I can't even mill these. I've got a sawmill right up the ridge here. You'll see it in a minute. You can't mill these cedars. They're just too close together, you know. If you went in with a chainsaw and cut about half of these down, just left them, probably in 30 years you'd have some trees in here that you could mill, you know. But right now we call it, basically this is like an outdoor barn. This is a good place for animals to get in when it's, you know, 10 below zero out in a blizzard. They can come in here and they're pretty darn comfortable in here. And so that's why we left them. We like to have a few cedar grows for winter usage.
It also helps them at this time when it's hot too, right?
They do, yeah. They can escape the flies, exactly. Yep, and get out of the sun. As you'll see in a minute. That's where they are right now, the sheep. They're up here in a cedar grove.
So Greg has taken an area like this right here that was overgrown and turned it into pasture right here for his animals to use, and it is so much more productive now. Now you were talking about the deep root system going through the hard pan.
Yes.
Now that is also going to provide more nutrients for your animals grazing through here as well, right?
Absolutely. You know, I took a soil life class with Dr. Elaine Ingham probably 10 years ago, and she's talking about, you know, all these minerals. All the minerals we need are on our farm. The problem is we got a hard pan down there, and so our plants can't reach that through that hard pan. And so with so good soil life and deep-rooted plants, those can bust through that hard pan, and so we need more of that. On really good productive pasture, you know, according to Elaine on some of her studies she's done, it's nice to have 50% arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi and 50% bacteria. We're talking about in the animals that are in the soil. We took a lot of soil samples on Judy Farms, and we didn't find any of the mycorrhizal fungi, except for where we have warm season plants.
Wow.
Now, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? You know, Elaine came, we did a soil life class here, a microscope. Everybody brought samples, and from their farm, their best soil or the compost or whatever, and she went through them with a microscope, had a big TV screen up, and I'm waiting till last. I'm like, man, I'm going to show people some fungi. We got to my samples, my good pasture, what I think is good cool season pasture, there wasn't any fungi in it.
Oh.
But underneath the eastern gamma grass and the big blue stem, that's where we found it.
Wow.
There was mycorrhizal fungi there, and it is the workhorse of your soil. And see, we've cropped our land so much in history, we've killed a lot of the mycorrhizal fungi. It's just not there. So we got to get the fungi back.
Wow, so that just shows that we could work our tail off to develop good soil, but if we're not working in unison with the plants and the earth, it won't work out as good.
Look at that. I mean, when I see something like that, it came out of the soil, and it's this tall, think about a plant. It's a mirror image of what's underneath the ground. Some of these plants are, you know, up to here. I've got a 4-foot taproot. Well, this little guy here is right here.
Yeah.
I'm 5'10", so it's, you know, it's over 4 foot long, the taproot on that. Well, we intentionally took the sheep out of here before they had a chance to, on the last paddock. The sheep don't go after it when it gets this tall. When it's short, they'll graze it. So what we're trying to do is allow this to go to seed. When it goes to seed, then we'll bring the cattle in and we'll trample that seed on the ground. When the cattle ingest some of it, they'll eat it. Well, it ends up in the manure. Guess what a manure pile is? It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful incubation site. You got moisture, you got fertility. What more does the seed need to come up?
Exactly right.
So, see the dew on your pants?
Yeah.
It hasn't rained, but it feels like it's rained.
Yeah.
And that's because we have a lot of carbon out here catching that rain, the dew.
And if it was more manicured, it wouldn't have that same amount there.
No, not at all. You can walk across and probably not even get your feet wet.
Yeah.
So this is our Catfish Feeder style mineral.
Ah.
So there's about 18 different minerals in here, and the sheep can go through and pick out exactly what they want, and they poop out about 70–80% of the mineral. And so over time we call this our traveling laboratory. The animals know what they need. A person in a lab somewhere with a lab coat on in a sterile environment, he can make up a mineral mix for you. He doesn't have a clue. He's just going by, you know, whatever. The animals know. And so they go through and pick out, they may not eat any of this one, but they may hog down some selenium. There's sodium, there's vitamins A, B, and C, there's copper. And, you know, copper is supposed to kill sheep. You don't want copper in your mix. Well, that's because most of the copper is put in like a cattle mineral. Here, where it's all by itself, a sheep's not going to intentionally kill itself. They eat just enough, and they need copper. Sheep need copper. And they've actually found out now that copper is actually pretty good in knocking out parasites. This is salt, and so what we're feeding here is a C90. This has got 90 essential C minerals in it. Sheep love it. And what we found out is when we went to the C90, they've really backed off the rest of the mineral. So they don't need as much now because that C90's got about everything in it. Oh, hey Pete, come here. But yeah, we got a chain on it. That's a heavy feeder. It weighs about 800 pounds. And the reason we did this flap like this is to keep it dry, but also we actually killed a couple lambs with the old style, and that's because this was setting down on here. And what would happen is a lamb would have his head in there eating, and one of his buddies would jump up on the top, and it broke his neck. And so with this design, we ran these boards up like that. It keeps that flap, even if a buddy jumps up there. We haven't lost the sheep since.
And then with the chain, you're just able to.
Goes around the,
you're just able to pull it with the tractor.
Yeah, no, that 4-wheeler.
Or 4? Okay.
Yeah. You got to have a 4-wheel drive 4-wheeler. A 2-wheel drive 4-wheeler will not pull that. But we use a 500cc Honda. I've tried about every other feeder, every other 4-wheeler, and we just find out that Hondas work about every day. And we don't have them in the shop that often either. Hey, Pete.
The dog can even get on top.
Yep. How you doing, Pete? This is a puppy. He's a really good young dog. He just constantly patrols. We've wormed him. He's had fresh meat. That dog will not put on weight.
No, he just
so
wants
we
to be
call
thin.
him. That's a high maintenance type. I mean, he just goes. He just goes. But you know what? If I lived where there was black buzzards, that dog would be worth $10,000.
Oh, really? Why's that?
He hates buzzards.
Ah.
And these black buzzards are the ones picking the eyeballs out of cattle. They're out by Ewell. I've seen them in North Carolina. There was a cow that calved, and before the calf could get out, the buzzards already picked the eyeballs out of it.
Oh.
Yeah. So these black vultures, they're a real deal, and you can't shoot them. They're federally protected. So these are the hair sheep. We run a guard dogs with them. We got five in here right now, but the hair, here's some that just came off. It's just, there's no market for hair. So these are a meat sheep. They're raised for meat. Or, you know, we sell them as breeding stock. Other people want to get a start from our sheep. We sell ewe lambs and ram lambs. And we sold out this year of the ewe lambs. They're a pretty hot commodity, but yeah, it's just hair, and it just comes off. So 25% of what a sheep eats goes to grow wool, and yet wool, you can't hardly give it away now unless it's a specialty wool, and it costs more to get them sheared than what you get for the wool. So our direction is, why would we want to grow all that wool when we can't sell it? Let's grow some meat. And so with the hair sheep, they shed off naturally. You don't have to shear them. Oh, and the other beauty is you don't have to dock their tails. On a wool sheep, you've got to dock the tail. If you don't, when the ewe lamb, she gets blood in the wool where the lamb comes out, and you get maggots. They'll eat the rear end right out of a ewe.
Wow.
Yeah.
What variety of breed of sheep is this again?
So this is St. Croix. We use all St. Croix rams on Katahdin ewes, Florida native or Gulf Coast. There's a little bit of Barbados black belly in here, and just a trace of Dorper. I didn't get along very good with Dorpers. Dorpers are great sheep if you can keep them alive, but they don't seem to have the parasite resistance that these do. So there's about 250 head in here.
Okay.
And then we have another flock at the ram farms. We got 100 rams we took out of here. Well, actually 105. And they're on another farm. You gotta keep the rams away from the girls. That's the biggest management there is in sheep. And I don't care where you live. If you want a good once a year lambing, keep the rams out of them. Target when your grass is nice and green and it's warm in the spring. In South Carolina or North Carolina, that might be April. In Missouri, it's May 1st. And so we count back 5 months, which would be December 1st. It's 5 months gestation, and we start lambing on pasture. These ewes do it all. We don't even bother with them. We don't even go out there. The only thing we do is we move them. We just move the wire and let them move forward with their babies. We do make sure the guard dog feeder's full, but I do not want to be out there messing with these lambs. Now, if we see a ewe, I've only had one. I know this is hard to believe. We've only had one ewe in 18 years that I've pulled.
Wow.
I went by her, and there was a little one sticking out, and she'd been there a while. It looked like she'd been there too long. I just reached down and grabbed it and pulled it out. She had twins, and both of them came out. They were fine, but that's the only one I've ever pulled.
Wow.
Yeah, in 18 years.
Wow, that's great.
We are pretty, we're probably harder on our sheep than anybody. We don't wean, we don't dock the tails, we don't trim the hooves, we don't worm, no grain, and no hay. Now, in the wintertime, if you get 2 foot of snow, we'll put some hay out. But what's funny, I did that right over here on this next field. And I went back to check the sheep after about 10 days of keeping the cow herd going in that deep snow. And these darn sheep had dug down through that snow that deep, and it ate the grass under that snow. A sheep has a foot like a deer, and they'll pull back the snow. A cow won't do that. So sheep are a lot more aggressive grazers in the wintertime than cattle are. They do grow a real thick fleece in the wintertime. So that they're adapted to cold weather much better than a cow. Oh, and the other thing, this is really cool. In the wintertime, as long as they're grazing stockpile like this, no water. They don't need any water.
So they pull all the moisture from the plant?
From the plants.
Wow.
Now, if you feed sheep hay, dry hay, you better give them some water. Yeah. There's no moisture in the hay. But, I mean, these are what's beautiful about this, folks, is the sheep. The economics of sheep actually kind of blow cattle apart. That little ewe right there, she can give you twin lambs. This year we averaged, it's the best we've ever done. It helped that we had 5 sets of triplets. But we averaged 2 lambs per ewe across the whole flock.
Wow.
The best we'd ever done was
Wow.
1.8.
Wow.
We did 2. And part of that is my wonderful interns, Ben and Isaac. They were here all winter, and now Connor's here this summer. He's cranking. He's doing a great job. But the boys really watch these sheep, and they make sure they don't limit them, give them what they need to eat. And, you know, they've got a good diet in here. And so our sheep do well. We call ourselves a predator in the sheep flock. So any ewe in here in September, right after we sell everything in August, so August 27th through the 30th, every lamb in here is marketed that we're going to sell. We go in immediately and we look at the ewes that are showing some pin bones on the top of their back, or their vertebrae showing, or you can just tell by looking at them, they're getting older, they're not doing as well. If you've got a thin ewe in September, sell her. Get rid of her, because she's not magically going to get fat in December.
Yeah.
She's going to look worse. So what did she do for September, October, November? She ate your precious feed, and she didn't put on any weight. So you keep your best animals. So you've got to be the predator in your herd. Don't name your animals. If they're not performing, just get rid of them. It's a business. That's what you have to do. And that's why we have such a healthy sheep flock. People say, but Greg, I got rid of my sheep. They were too much work. I'm like, what? What do you mean they're too much work? They're the least work animal we have on our farm. All we do is feed. We make sure that guard dog feeder over there's full. That's it. And the mineral, and we move them. The ewes that gives you twins, they've already paid for themselves, and you're making money the first year.
Wow.
You can't do that with a cow. And you can turn rams into a 7-month-old ewe. And at 12 months of age, when she turns her first birthday, she gives you a baby. A cow, you can't even breed her till she's 15 months old. And then she calves at 2 years of age. So it's a lot quicker turnaround cash flow with sheep than it is cows. And a lot of people are on small homesteads today. They're getting 5 acres, 7, 8, maybe an acre. I don't know. And they say, Greg, how many cows can we run? I'm like, don't do cows, do sheep. Because for every cow that you can run on your farm, you can run 7 sheep. They'll eat the same amount. We can come on in here a little closer.
And speaking of getting started with sheep, if someone just had less than 5 acres, maybe an acre or 2, how would you suggest they get started? Like, would you recommend 7 or somewhere around 10 with those numbers in mind?
The question is, how many sheep would you recommend starting with? Let's say you had an acre of grass. It all comes down to building a rotation. You've got to build enough time on that 1 acre that when you move your sheep around that in a circle, or however you want to do it, that where you started out grazing at, that grass is recovered. Well, how do you know if it's recovered? You can tell right here. By looking at the tip. So if you've got a plant tip on your grass, you can bring your sheep into that paddock. If it looks like that on the end, it's still blunt, that plant has not recovered. You can bring the animals back in and they'll eat that, but you just cost yourself a major mistake. Now the plant only has this much left to catch solar energy. Folks, we are in the solar energy business. So the longer and fully mature plant leaf that you can grow out there and harvest to a ruminant animal and leave at least 50% of that leaf intact, the quicker it grows back. So on an acre, I can't tell you the answer to that, Mike. It depends on where you live. In Utah, it's 70 to 80 acres for 1 cow. In Missouri, it's 2 acres, 2 to 3 acres. I think the county average in this county in Boone's about 4. We're stocked at 2. So it takes 2 acres to run one of our cows for a year.
So how do you keep the sheep contained in the area or the paddock that you want them to be in?
Well, you saw that wire we drove over. Down there we have a 1 single polywire. It's about 10 inches off the ground. And I say polywire, it's poly braid. And for sheep fencing, you got to start out with 3 wires. So we put one at like 6, one at like 10, and one at like 14. And we did that for about 3 or 4 months. And we moved them with 3 polywires on all 4 sides of them. It was a lot of work. And then we went down to 2 wires. And now we've been down to 1 for 3 years.
Wow, just one
One
wire.
wire. Yep.
Wow.
And you see they're all in. There's nothing on that side of the fence. They're all where they're supposed to be.
Wow. Now, did some of the older ones kind of train the younger ones where to stay with the...
There was a couple that wouldn't stay in, and we just got rid of those.
Okay.
You're going to have some troublemakers, and you just got to get rid of those.
Okay.
And they're really good eating.
Yeah.
I'll just give you that. You notice we don't put any tags in our sheep. There's no tags in these sheep. And so if you got a troublemaker, how do you know which one it was? Because he runs back in the flock. You get him while he's outside the flock. We just go out there and harvest one for the refrigerator or the freezer.
And harvesting the ones that are being the troublemakers, that also can help you kind of, I guess, weed out some of the genetics that you don't want to perpetuate.
That's right. That's right. We're looking at a design that we may start marketing some of these. They don't have to be this big, but we had 20-some dogs. And so we had a feeder on both sides, and each feeder holds 75 pounds of dog feed. And so if a young dog was in here eating, and a big dog came in behind him to whip him, all he's got to do is just keep right on running, and he can escape out the other end.
Oh.
And so you don't have young dogs going without eating dog feed.
And then you also have it where, with it being set up like this, the sheep don't get in there and
sheep cannot
bother
get in
the
there.
food.
I've never found a sheep in here ever. Yeah. But the dogs just come right up here on the front and they just crawl underneath that. And of course, here's our chain that goes on the ball of our four-wheeler. We just pull it to the next paddock. So this one actually has a chain on each end. So no matter which way we're going, we can pull it. What's crazy about sheep numbers, there's over 200 sheep right there. You would never guess that.
No.
Oh, Greg, there's about 80 there. No, start counting. There's about 200.
The dog's just hanging out right there with him.
Yep. That's the big boy at the very back. The lady. She may still be down in the trees. And then there's another pup in there too. But yeah, they're great sheep.
And the one strand wire that you have, that keeps the dogs in as well as the sheep? Wow.
Now, if there was a coyote on the other side of that single wire and they saw him, they're going to jump over that wire and go after him.
Yeah. Now, is there a certain number of dogs that you feel is ideal for a certain number of sheep?
Yeah, so with guarding dogs, typically one dog can easily guard 100 by itself. But we have found that when the coyotes, if you got lots of coyotes around, it's so much better to have 2 dogs. And the coyotes are smart. They'll come in and start barking and try and draw a dog away. And if you only got one dog and he takes off chasing that coyote, the other coyote comes in and kills while your dog's chasing the other coyote. So guard dogs are pretty smart. We had 3 coyotes come in, and I saw this whole thing. It happened in front of me. And the 3 coyotes are down in our cow herd, and they were kind of headed up toward the sheep, and the guard dogs saw them. And they started barking, I mean just barking viciously. And one dog stayed with the sheep and got them, started barking and got them all in a circle. The other 2 dogs went after those coyotes. And I mean, they were barking so fast, I can't even duplicate it.
Wow.
It was like, "Arr, arr, 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 arr," like that. And I mean, those dogs looked like they were that tall, and they were burning them coyotes off of that farm. I mean, the coyotes are having to run to stay ahead. And the dogs were twice as big as the coyotes. And they ran them to the end of my farm. I'm like, I'm never going to see the dogs again. It wasn't not even 30 seconds. Here they come back, and they were spinning. They had their hackles up, and they were playing with each other, biting on each other. Man, we showed them coyotes. You know, and they came back, and it was just the neatest thing.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
You know, like, come on back, coyote, if you want some more of that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty darn cool.
So, for the most part, your dogs can handle their own with guarding the sheep?
Yes.
Okay.
We have bobcats out here. We had something come through here really bad. I don't know what it was. But it killed my neighbor's Anatolian shepherd, ripped the throat out of it. Killed 7 goats, ate 2 of them, wow. And it jumped out of the goat pen with a half-eaten goat.
Wow.
So that's not a coyote. That's not a bobcat. It had to be a mountain lion.
Wow. And
we never lost a sheep, but they only had 1 guard dog. We had 3. And so our dogs are making such a ruckus that night that whatever that predator was like, I don't think I want to go tackle that, you know. So it's the barking. So if your daughter right here is the sheep, and I'm the coyote, and I'm sneaking up on her, and I'm going to grab a hold of her throat and take her to the ground, I can't do it if there's a dog barking. The coyote's got to be 100% focused on killing, and with that dog doing that arr, arr, arr in the back, I can't kill. So that's what you want. You want a dog that barks. You don't really want a dog that just chases coyotes clear to yonder and back, because your sheep aren't protected. I see a lot of guard dogs out here on the roads, and they've probably chased something, they didn't go back, or they're just not bonded onto the sheep. And we've had real trouble with certain breeds. I love a Pyrenees dog as a pet, but they don't stay around the sheep very well. They start roaming. And the Pyrenees that we've had, every one of them except for one's been killed on the road. The average lifespan of a Pyrenees guard dog is 3 years. Yeah. And it's not a predator killing them, it's the cars. They just get out on the highways, and they're just not very vehicle smart. They'll stand right in the highway and look ahead, and pow, they're dead. So these dogs are a Marama, 1/2 Marama, 1/4 Anatolian, and 1/4 Pure. They are with the sheep all the time. They think they're a sheep.
Sheep with fangs.
Sheep with fangs.
I like that.
Yep. So a good question I get, Mike, a lot is, well, why can't you run llamas? Or maybe put some donkeys in there. You can. And some people do that and have really good luck. I can tell you, I can write a book on the number of stories that haven't worked so well. And the biggest one was my friend in Oklahoma. They went to a picture show one night and they had, I think, 8 llamas in with they had a big flock of sheep, like 800 head. They came back the next day and there was 300 dead ones. And I think there was like 200 had been ripped open. Had pieces of flesh hanging off of them. And what happened was a neighboring group of wild dogs came into those sheep. And they made it so rough on those llamas that the llamas took off. They ran to the barn. And when the owner got home, that's where the llamas were still in the barn. The sheep were just slaughtered. And his parting words to me was, Greg, you know how much dog feed I could have bought for 300 dead sheep? Enough to last me in my lifetime. So his words were, make sure you have a white sheep that's got fangs.
Yeah.
Because you're guarding against fangs. You got something wanting to rip your sheep. You have something out there to rip them open, grab them. And a guard dog is just no match for a coyote. A big guard dog is just going to hammer a coyote. Now, you get 3 coyotes in one dog, that's not fair. That's why I run 2 or 3.
Makes sense.
We've got bobcats. There's a lot of bobcats coming in now, and I like bobcats. I could have shot a bobcat. It came in to me turkey hunting. It thought I was a turkey. And that was the neatest thing. I saw him come in. He got within like me to your daughter from. He was that close. And I'm full camo underneath the cedar tree. And he's looking at me like, there should be a turkey in there. And it kind of freaks you to have a predator that close to you. And I finally stood up and he flew and took off. And the landlord goes, why didn't you shoot him? You got sheep in that paddock. I'm like, nope, not going to do that. We're predator friendly. So what I mean by that is every time you shoot a predator on your farm, you can expect to start losing livestock. You know why that is?
Why's that?
The predators that make a home on your farm, they kind of know the ins and outs. They know there's wildlife there, and if you're managing your farm in sync with nature, there's going to be plenty of rabbits and bunnies. If they mess with those sheep, there's a guard dog over there. Well, if you shoot that coyote, a coyote mates for life. So when you shoot a coyote, there's 8 more come in to take his place. Those 8 that come in, they don't know the rules. They're going to start killing sheep. So don't be shooting predators if you want to be in the livestock business. Ian, my friend from Africa, he was convinced that the leopards and lions were taking him out of business on his cows, killing calves. And so he was shooting them. And finally he stopped shooting them, he stopped losing calves. Now they kill baby kudu or antelope or whatever, but they don't mess with his cattle.
Wow. So when you take them away, there comes a void, and others come fill that void. But you keep them there, they learn the rules of the territory.
That is their territory. Anything comes in there, they're going to whip them. That's their territory.
Makes a lot of sense.
There was a trapper in Oklahoma. My friends told me about, he's a professional trapper. He came in the wintertime, and I mean, he cleaned house on coyotes. He caught like 160. And there's just this one farming area. That next year, the coyote predation was so high that they had to pin them at night behind the electronet.
Wow.
They had guard dogs and they were still losing lambs.
Wow.
They'd never had that happen before.
Wow.
But when that trapper took out all those area coyotes, man, they just come flooding in.
Wow.
And they just couldn't keep the sheep safe.
Wow.
So there's something to it.
Wow. Now, for somebody looking to start with a guardian livestock dog or 2 or 3, what would be your suggestion for them in getting started? Like where to go to find?
Yeah, so don't go to a pet shop that's just selling pet guardian dogs, or a hobby. Somebody that's just got hobby dogs. Go to somebody that's raising them out on the farm, where you have dogs that we call them working parents. So the working parents have the experience of living with the sheep, not killing the sheep, not harassing the sheep. They know how to eat at a guardian dog. They know how to get around. They know how to get around on the landscape. You go buy a pup out of a kennel somewhere, he's not going to know anything. He's probably going to harass your sheep. He may even chase them down and kill them. So get them from working parents. And if you're lucky enough to get one, a good one, do you fix it or do you have it unfixed? Well, it depends if you want to get into the raising puppy business. If you're going to raise pups, of course, you don't want to fix him. But here's the problem. When you have an unfixed dog out here with your sheep, he's going to go looking for females when they're in heat. She is going to draw in other males. And you may get her bred by a border collie or a beagle or whatever's in the area. And when she gets bred, she's not guarding your sheep anymore. She's being a mother. So we fix most of our dogs in here, and there's one dog in here, big boy, he's not fixed. But he's good. He stays around most of the time, and I just don't have any problem with him. But if you want a guard dog, you probably ought to get him fixed. So if you get one good one, find somebody that's got a good young puppy that you can put in there, and that puppy needs to be 8 weeks old. He needs to have all of his parvo shots. And there's a lot of naturalists out here that don't believe in shots, and I was one of them. I was like, you know, you don't need to give them shots. We don't give our cattle any shots. Why do you got to give a dog a shot? Huh. I learned the hard way. We bought a whole litter of Commodores, beautiful, beautiful puppies. Just been weaned, and the breeder didn't believe in shots. And I said, well, have they had their parvo? No, you don't need to give them that. Well, within a week, every one of them had died. They all contacted parvo. And parvo will kill a puppy in 3 to 8 hours. They're just dead, just kills them. And it's in the soil. So once you have parvo on your farm, it's there. So folks, give them their parvo shot. They're a puppy. And the mother, as long as they're sucking on the mommy, up to 4 weeks of age, 4 to 5 weeks, she has natural parvo prevention in her milk, antibodies. But when you take that puppy away from the mama and she doesn't get the milk anymore, that's when they contact parvo, or they can. So you give them a parvo shot every 3 weeks, three sets, 3 weeks apart. And then they're good to go. The only thing we do after that, it may be a little bit of frontline, something to keep the ticks off of them. Of course, if they get kind of wormy looking, we'll worm them. But these dogs don't really get wormy. I mean, I haven't wormed Big Boy in he's 5 now. He's never been wormed since he was a pup.
Wow.
You can tell that dog's not wormy.
Wow, and he is outside 24/7.
Yeah, 24/7, healthy, barks like mad, you know, at night. These dogs will sleep all day long, but at night, you drive by here, you hear them barking. And that's what they're doing, they're working. You want a dog at night that barks to keep the coyotes at bay.
Now, once they're past the puppy stage, are there any issues with parvo beyond that?
Nope.
Something you have to worry about?
Nope.
Okay. So
Nope.
it's mainly being the young ones.
Yep. And you know, if you just got a couple of dogs, you really want to keep them up in good shape, it's probably advisable to, to give them a rabies shot. We don't have a lot of rabies incidents. I haven't heard of any around here, but I guess it's something that could happen.
Yeah.
But yeah. We feed like a 18 to 19% protein dog feed in the summertime. They don't eat a lot of dog feed in the summer, but when it's cold out, we'll bump that up to like a 23, 24% protein. They'll eat some dog feed when it's cold. We give them a lot of meat scraps. When we butcher our animals, we'll have a lot of bones, fat, or some organ meats like kidneys and stuff that we don't eat. We'll give those to the guard dogs, and they do real well on the meat scraps. When you have a bunch of dogs, it doesn't work real well because they fight. If you got like 2 or 3 and there's an alpha, the other 2 dogs know which one the alpha is. They let her eat her meat. When she's done, they can kind of come in and eat what's left. But when it's cold out, a good chunk of beef fat, man, that's a lot better than giving them dog feed.
Yeah, sure is. That's one of the things we started doing here recently, is giving our animals more of like things from when we process chickens or ducks, and even bone. We even make stock and broth for them at times, and we've noticed their vitality and vigor just seems to be a lot better.
A lot better. You know, there's a saying, I'll share it with you. When you're in the livestock business, you're also in the dying business. Sometimes they die. And we try and salvage the meat on, like, let's say a cow's calving, and we're there and we try and save her and it doesn't work. Well, we salvage the meat. But what's left after we take the meat off, we take it to the guard dogs. And it's gone. I mean, it's just gone. In like 2 days, you can just find a little nubbin of a bone. I mean, and it's good. I mean, and they don't eat any dog food during that time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when you got guard dogs and you have an animal that deceased for whatever reason, we do salvage the meat if it's, something died of natural causes, but the dogs get the rest of it.
Yeah.
Our dogs, we give them bones. They love bones, and they'll take them out and they'll bury them. So our farm is just covered with buried bones. Well, guess what? There's a lot of calcium being added to the soil in those buried bones.
I never thought about that.
Oh, they love burying them.
Well, I never
Half
thought
the
about
time they
that.
don't remember where they buried them. They just know they don't want the other buddy to get the duck. We got one dog, he'll work, just dig and dig and dig, and he'll bury it and then take his nose and push it down, and the other dogs are watching him. As soon as he walks off, another dog goes up and digs it up and takes his bone.
Oh, that's funny. Now, if you did want to breed your guardian dogs, would you put like the ones that, say, your 2 breeders, would you keep them inside or somewhere separate, so that would be like their main priority?
No.
No.
Leave them with the sheep.
Just leave them with the sheep. Okay.
Now, when that female gets ready to whelp, that's the thing. In the summertime, it can be an issue. In summertime, it's not an issue. In the wintertime, it's a real issue. And so we have a shelter, and we have I built basically a whelping pen, or it's actually a box. It's elevated, and we put we got one of these heat blanket things we put in there to keep the puppies warm. And it's a small interest, so it's keeping that whole box warm. So the female can come out and eat and drink, and we got her in netting, electric netting.
Mm-hmm.
And then she can go back in, and the puppies can suck. Pretty soon those little puppies are crawling out of that box, but they go back in when they get cold. In the wintertime, it's just a tough time to have pups. That's why we kind of stopped. We're not raising any more puppies. I can buy them. I've got 2 or 3 breeders that raise them. Let them raise them. Do you know puppy whelping is a whole nother deal. It's different than raising guard dogs. It takes a lot of care. That female will get thin on you. You really got to feed her good. If she's got 8 or 10 pups sucking on her, they can just draw all the condition off that female pretty darn quick.
So, and your focus is as a farmer, not a breeder.
Right.
Let the breeder focus on being the breeder.
Let the breeder focus on producing healthy pups, and we'll buy them.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. You can't do everything. You got to pick out what you're good at and be good at it.
It's been one of the hard lessons for us with this whole farm and homesteading adventure, realizing there's so many things that are interesting that you want to do, but you kind of narrow that focus and do what you need to do.
That's right. That's right. I see so many wrecks on small homesteads where people are trying to do it all, and guess what? Nothing's working. The cows are crap, the sheep are crap, the geese are crap, everything's crap. It's because nothing's working. They didn't get it down. I think you ought to find out what your Mother Earth, your mothership is. Mother Earth. Mothership. And the mothership should be what you wake up in the morning thinking about. What you love doing. Make that your mothership, and then everything else can complement that. But get that mothership going. That's your cash flow. That's what's generating the cash. And then once you get that going, and if you want to venture into sheep or goats or ducks or geese, whatever, that's fine. But to do it all at once, Mike, it's a lot of stress. And I do consulting all over the United States, and I go into these farms and I can see it. When I walk on, I can look at the people, and they're not happy. Things aren't working like they thought they would. And it's because they're not doing it right.
Yeah, a lot of people over-romanticize when they get into doing this.
They do.
And reality slaps them in the face.
Oh, this farming is just such a much relaxing deal. But it can be very idyllic, but it can also be very stressful.
Yes. Just that one strand there.
That's my sheep fence. Can you believe that?
That's crazy.
That's keeping a sheep in. But if you shut this off, you can hear it just popping.
Yeah.
There's 9,500 volts in this.
Wow.
I don't know if I've got... With sheep fencing, you got to keep your posts fairly close. Now, right here in this roadway, I always put one in the middle of the road. But typically, we can go about 16 feet. 12 to 16 feet between posts. If on cattle, I can go up to 80, 70, 80 feet. But sheep are very visual creatures, and when they see all those white posts, there's something up there. To give you an example, when we moved them from there to here yesterday, we rolled the wire up and laid it right over there so they could come through here. I didn't pull that post. And I was over there going, sheep, 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 sheep. That's what I do. I'm the sheep man. I go, sheep, 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 sheep. They got to right here. They're like, there's a post here. We know there's a wire, and it's going to shock us. And they stopped. And finally, one brave sheep stepped through, and then the whole flock went through. But they all went through right here. They didn't go through over there. They all went through right here.
Oh,
Even
wow.
though there was an opening there, they wouldn't go through that opening. They had followed that one sheep. So you hear the old thing where the sheep jumps the fence and the rest of them, what is it in your dreams, you're counting sheep jumping the fence? Well, that's kind of right. They all follow that first sheep.